I think you would agree that a certain level, some kind of regulations, rules may be necessary. But I guess the point that's coming through is we can put a greater emphasis on proactively building a collective reflex that is more democratic, or doesn't seem like coming from the government. And I think society as a whole will benefit from that. What's your sense?
Any society would have place some limits and draw certain lines. Viswa, you used the example of Tan Pin Pin's film, and it's a film about history. And in SG50, we are putting so much emphasis on understanding history. And for that very reason alone, plus many other good reasons that I can think of, there should not be a de facto ban on Pin Pin's film. I say this in my personal capacity without representing any organization.
But technically, I gather it's not banned. The film is not banned, but the restrictions on...
I use the word de facto. Perhaps that's a bit strong. Because, first of all, we are living in an age where content can be found in many sources. Through many sources. And critical judgment is something that we want to develop in the young, and possibly too, that has got something to do with creativity, which we sometimes stereotypically don't think of Singaporeans as being creative and so on.
You're kidding. Okay, sorry.
But what I'm saying is that how the line is drawn, and no doubt there are public panels comprising members of the public and so on. But I certainly do hope that the lines are not drawn forever in the same way, and that there will be some growth and development, for want of better terms, in the way we look at some of these issues. On the question of history, you see, 1965 was certainly very important. But so is everything that happened from 1945 after the war, and of course before, and so on. For a people to feel that they belong to a place, and this is why you are seeing all these debates about Bukit Brown and so on. Citizens who have had no idea where Bukit Brown was, are now sort of jealously guarding, And is this a good sign? In many ways, it's a good sign.
But I agree with him, Professor, in that the common identity, history, claiming by the young people of their identity of Singapore is extremely important, and we as a society must facilitate that.
The best buffer against radicalization of any form is if you have something that is supra, a larger identity that is strong. And that's what Woon is referring to. You see, and that identity of being a Singaporean, being a part of a history, a common history.
Can I take a different stand
race,
from
language,
this?
and religion? Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't think that we need to bang on the idea of a national identity all the time. I think, in fact, we have to loosen up. This year is the year of the nations, SG50. Every single day, people are going to tell you, you are Singaporean, right? And so I think there is a sense that we should actually move away a little bit from this idea of a national identity. Yes, there is a yearning to identify from where you come from, but that does not have to have the nation right in front of us. And why I say this is because it's important in trying to cultivate a cosmopolitan existence, right? With a very strong national identity also comes a very strong sense of xenophobia. I think that happens. Of course, you can define national identity in a more inclusive manner. I think that's okay too. But if I just look at the literary scene, for example, every single novel I read is a novel about the nation. There is no novel, or maybe this is too strong a sentence, but there's very few novels that I can see that deals with the human condition. What does it mean to be a human being in a place like Singapore?
I think the identity comes about once you know your history, and that history and your legacy could even be based on your lineage, it can be based on your ethnic background and so on, but that all of us converge and we live together. See, but all that's not going to happen if you don't have a strong enough sense of history.
Yes,
That's
I
the
think
point. That's the
a
point
strong
you're
sense of
making.
history is important.
Yeah.
But if I can just add on a bit more, I think the idea of a revisionist history is something that we should actually move away from. I think all histories are contested. I think this is very important. It's scholarly even to have.
Some say that all histories are revisionist.
Right, exactly. All history are narrative coming from a literary perspective.
Okay.
It's a matter
I
of
think
story.
we're becoming too
Yeah,
teen
okay,
here.
all right.
Okay, so
But no, I mean, the point is important because you cannot define a single country by one account. You have to look at it as in multiple accounts. And so, yes, maybe Tan Tin Pin's film has some concerns in terms of security, but it definitely has to be out there for people to make judgment.
okay,
about,
so let me ask a simple question.
On that, in this day and age, there is no such thing as banning with online. So any statement like that is more a statement of principle
right.
by the government, and it can only be a statement of principle because you can go and watch it anytime you want online.
Yeah. So, but that statement of principle itself
it's an ethical stand.
It is a stand, and it's. You see, the point we're making, Minister, is some of these
No,
things.
sorry, I wasn't going to debate this, but
I know.
I was just making the point that
Okay.
actually it's not as if, therefore you can prevent people from watching.
I agree.
Right. Yeah.
And because you can't prevent people from watching,
Yeah.
we need to loosen up on some of these impositions because they don't really work at the end of the day, right? So if we've got another 10, 15 minutes left, but I just want to bring the discussion to this whole issue of the Sedition Act, right? Because in part one, we talked about laws, blasphemy laws, and so on. In Singapore, we don't have anti-blasphemy laws as much, but we have the Sedition Act. So under what circumstances, Minister, would the Sedition Act be applied?
Well, you have the Religious Harmony Act, you have the Sedition Act, you have the Penal Code. Broadly, they will cover what I've already said. If you insult another religion, another race, I think they can come into play, but we try and avoid court prosecutions as far as possible. We get our agencies to talk to them first and try and calm things down, prevent that kind of conduct, and indeed try and get them to reach out to the other side. And that has worked by and large. Sometimes we have had to prosecute.
There is some concern on the ground that slowly the government or the legislation is being applied to cyberspace, to the internet, where there's a general assumption that people have a lot more freedom and latitude to express themselves. Is there any validity to that? Is it a valid assumption that the principles of the law that applies to mainstream would equally apply to cyberspace?
I think most all jurisdictions which are civilized come out and say what you do in the cyberspace and what you do in the physical space. If you go and attack someone and you cast aspersions on them, their religion, why should you be exempt? I mean, the laws should be the same regardless of the medium.
Yeah, I think the social media basically, no, not basically, but really operates in a different way from the mainstream media. There is a lot more, I mean, in the mainstream media, and I used to be a journalist, there's a lot more double checking of facts and, a very careful, measured kind of process before it comes out. And of course, the social media works in a different manner. You have social media websites that does have such processes, and such as the Independent Singapore, for instance. But at the same time, the social media is important because I think in Asia, if we look at the Malaysian election and in Singapore election, the social media has been very influential in sometimes, helping the voting public to come to a conclusion as well. So, and I think that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And
I don't disagree with the importance of social media. I'm thinking in terms of, I mean, would you allow people to put out images of the Prophet in a pornographic setting?
So
let's be clear.
Yeah. So what you're referring to, Minister, is in some of those very specific areas, it's not so much
whatever
about
we say the mainstream media cannot do, or you cannot do in the mainstream media, attack somebody else's religion, attack somebody else's race. There are laws; those apply equally to the online space.
Yeah. But again,
it's not as if you can go out there and show, as Charlie Hebdo did, Catholic nuns masturbating, and just because you're online as opposed to the print, you get away with it.
Yeah.